Cool. So I want to welcome Mark Tregilgas onto the podcast today. We're going to talk about all things training for the over 30 male. So if I get a quick background from yourself, Mark, and then we'll get cracking.
Hey, Chris. So first things first, it's great to be on. Really appreciate you reaching out to me. So a little bit about me. I'm a 38-year-old fitness coach. Been in the industry now 10 years. Two little boys, age 4 and 3, which keep me on my toes. A little bit of background is I got into the industry at the age of 27, 28. Was a busy personal trainer, sort of training everyone. Got busy really, really quick, but then also got burnt out quite quick. So during a period of sort of downtime, when I sort of had the down tools, I was sort of looking on the internet. I was thinking to myself, there's got to be a smarter way, especially if I end up having a family, of earning a living rather than just thrashing myself 7 days a week. Sure, the money was good, but I was completely knackered. And it was around that time that I discovered internet marketers, following a couple of guys from the States. And a lot of them were talking about doing boot camps because you can train more people and you can charge less. I thought, yeah, that sounds good. And a lot of them were talking about becoming a niche specialist, and I thought, this is interesting. So I had these ideas sort of bubbling around in my head, and I thought, what can I niche in? I was 31. I was anti-postnatal training. I didn't really want to become like a niche master in anti-postnatal training. As much as I enjoyed it, I didn't really want to do an anti-postnatal boot camp. And it just sort of came to me. I was 31. I was leaner and fitter than I had been in years, simply because I applied the knowledge that I'd learned in my 4 years in the industry. And I thought, I could do something for over 30s men. Just had this sort of inspired action and thought, yeah, that could work, because I'm 31. I feel great. I wonder how many guys out there that don't feel so good, that maybe feel like their best days are behind them. So I literally put a post out on Facebook that I was looking for 10 guys in Cardiff to come and be part of something. I didn't really know what it was going to be. And then I exhausted my email list, contacting all my old football contacts. And yeah, I set up a 30-plus boot camp in Cardiff in May 2010. And since then, it's grown into like a global online business, and we've got 9 boot camp locations across the country, and also a very big following online, in which we have a multitude of different services that we offer.
So how does it work online in terms of, because obviously you do the boot camp at the physical location, so how does the online stuff work?
Okay, so with the online stuff, it's a great question. What we tend to do is I like to target men at a very what they would call, they're almost like self-proclaimed couch potatoes. So we target guys that are, between the age of 30 and 50, that have young families, because obviously you can do all this via Facebook targeting. And we go after the guys that admit they're currently doing nothing. They're inactive. They've got no energy. They want to be able to run around with their kids, but they are just overwhelmed. And they're clueless about where to start, because there's so much information out there. So what we do is we generally get them started on our 28-day starter fat loss program, which is a very simple bodyweight home training program, no kettlebells or anything like that, just getting guys off the couch, doing 6 to 8 minute bodyweight circuits 3 times a week, and giving them a nutritional template, which is based around real foods. We don't tend to focus too heavily on their calorie requirements initially. We try to get them hydrated. We try to get them eating more vegetables, more protein, and get them moving. And we do that for 28 days. And then after 28 days, it's highly likely that the said guy has increased his energy, his sleep's better, all these things that he's been looking for, and he's lost some weight. Then we actually move them on. We can move them into another program whereby we introduce a kettlebell. I'm very big on kettlebells. I love kettlebell training because you can do it from home. And then they may get moved into a paid members club, where we offer, we do a little bit more strength stuff, but again, using 2 kettlebells. So, they can start doing things like front squats and cleans and presses and push-ups off the kettlebells, lunges. And then again, we have a multitude of different paths they can go down. They can join our barbell programs. We've got 3 actual barbell programs now. One I collaborated with somebody, and 2 I wrote myself. So what we try to do is we try to get guys, they come in at a very basic level. They need energy. They need some get up and go. They need to be able to run around with their kids. And then we take them on the full journey. So we've had guys coming in that are seriously overweight and ending up with veins popping out of their biceps because we've taken them on that full journey over the period of, say, 2 years.
Cool. That sounds awesome. So what, I know there was a kind of snippets in that, in what you just said there, but what would you say, is there a difference in your opinion with training someone that's over 30 than someone that's, young guys? Are there things you would do differently, or you would train them differently, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think the thing is, obviously, the testosterone levels are dropping, so it is important to make these guys aware that they need to do resistance training. But at a very basic level, some of them might be scared of the gym. They might not want to set foot in the gym. So I think you have to look at each person as an individual. Now, I'm a big fan of interval training. I love interval training, but I find that at the age of 38 now, if I interval train more than 2 or 3 times a week, I am completely whacked out. So am I going to advise that to a brand new client that's maybe like 18 or 19 stone? No, I might get that guy to just up his steps, to buy a Fitbit and actually just get walking. So, it very much depends on where the individual's at. Sure, we want you to lift weights, but, at 30 plus, you've also got to be mindful of the recovery. And you also have to take into account of where is that guy currently right now? Has he got any injuries? How heavy is he? Okay, right. Let's see what he can do, and then just start from there. So it's not. Our plans are generic for the masses, but we give people the options in the group. So, for example, in the 28-day plan, we have a cardio day where we say to guys, look, you've got the option. You can go for a long walk, or you can do some intervals, or you can go for a run. But if you weigh this much, and if you're carrying this, then we advise you just walk for now. So, yeah.
Fine. And what is the biggest? What do you think the biggest barrier is for people that, like, for guys that are over 30? You've mentioned, like, that generally speaking, you're getting people that are off the couch sort of thing. So why is it you think people have got to that state where they are in that position where they haven't exercised for years, and what is it do you think that makes them kind of gives them that oomph to kind of get going, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think that life, gets in the way. I mean, I've always been into exercise from a very young age. I've always exercised. My mum was an aerobics instructor. I used to go to classes with her. We'd go running. My dad was always taking part in the football train as a kid. I used to run cross country. And even though I battled my way in my early 20s, which actually led me to becoming a personal trainer, I'd always been active, right? What you find is, and I saw this with a lot of my mates would, in our 20s, they'd go out, they'd be drinking, they'd be boozing, not really doing anything, but getting away with it. It was like they would stay fit and healthy. They'd play a bit of, badminton or whatever. But then all of a sudden, boom, kids, careers, financial pressures, all that, boom, it just hits you. And, it is pretty life-changing. And, I've got 2 boys now, 4 and 3. When I came on, when they came along, my business was on the rise. But I also, when they came along, I went VAT registered. My partner stopped working. We moved to a bigger house. All these things hit me like, like a hammer to the head. And I was like, wow. But thankfully, I understood the importance of exercise. And, even though I had a really tough time physically and mentally, I knew it was important to exercise. But I think what happens is a lot of these guys that they've never really embraced exercise. They might have played a bit of five-a-side or a bit of badminton, but they don't really understand the positives of it. And if they have, they've only ever done it for aesthetics. And so the kids come along, they got the job, they've got the mortgage. They might have a kid. The missus gives up work. They stop sleeping, and then all of a sudden, shit. They wake up one morning with a belly, but not just that. They're knackered. They got brain fog. Kids aren't sleeping. And they're like, oh, geez. And here's a really interesting thing, like, Chris, and this is what I say to all my clients. Like, when you have a little one, when your baby's born, they don't do a lot initially. So you have this whole, like, this cute little baby which just sleeps, cries, eats, and shits. Can I say that?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, it's fine.
But then what happens is that they get on their feet within 2 years, right? And then you've got to chase after them. Then you've got to be on your toes. Then they want to go down the park. Then they want you to go, running around them at the soft play. And to be able to do that, I think probably people like me and you, we take it for granted because we're fit guys. But I think what happens is this happens for guys and they think, shit, like, I can't lie here on the sofa and make excuses. And I've gone all around the country on my boot camp tours and guys have said to me, Tregs, thanks, because I was that guy that was making excuses about, oh, we'll go to the park tomorrow to their daughter or their son. Oh, no, not now. Whereas, like, don't get me wrong, kids are very demanding and we all need that little 5 minutes to ourselves. But, to have the energy to be able to run around with them is, for me, that's what it's all about. And that's my message. And I think that the pain becomes too much for these guys and they're overwhelmed with guilt. They're overwhelmed with, I'm not going to be that, I don't want to be that guy sat there making excuses. You might see the other dad at the soft play who's in pretty good shape running around with his kids and think, shit, yeah, I need to be like that. Do you know what I mean? And for me, that's the most important thing. I want my boys to look at me and go, wow, daddy's, he's running around, he's playing football just like my dad, just like my mum was with me. Yeah. I never want to be in that pain where I think, oh, not right now, son. I'm laying on the sofa feeling guilty and I'm just knackered. I don't want to be that guy. And I think that it happens to too many and that pain is too much. They have to then go and change.
Yeah, and it gives also, and I know that the listeners of the podcast know that I've got a daughter, and I think it also gives you ridiculous amounts of joy to do that with them, to run around and just muck about and play, and all the laughter you get and all that sort of thing. I think that is invaluable in and of itself, and so
it's like we take these. I mean, more so now. I mean, your daughter's 2, right?
Yeah, 2.5. Yeah,
she's on her feet, right? Girls get up really early.
Yeah.
So my boys didn't stand up. It's like 18, 19 months. But really simple things. The pleasure I get out of finishing boot camp on a Saturday and having my partner bring the boys to the park all afternoon on their scooters and their little cars and just playing. I just turn my phone off, be totally present with them and just that's what, for me, that's what life's about. Or we take them for a nice long walk down on Barry Island because, the kids need the fresh air too, right? But the bonus is that we keep active because we're on our feet all afternoon chasing after them. And like you said, to be able to do that is a complete joy. These are moments that we'll never get back. It's like I look at my boys and they're 4 and 5 and I think, right, I'm the center of their world at the minute. But, in 10 years time, maybe I won't be so cool. Yeah. So I just try and, for them, I try and treasure each moment and make the most of it as I can.
Absolutely. And what do you think, are there specific or particular regular barriers for people as they come in the sense of, or not necessarily barriers, but more myths? So when people come into the programs and they are starting from complete scratch, what are the kind of the biggest myths or the things that people think coming in that aren't necessarily the case or true? Yeah,
I mean, it's funny. I mean, just the questions I had, before I became a coach and understood nutrition and training, or I have a big global community, about 9,500 guys in it, and the new guys come in and they maybe think, well, if I just drink protein shakes, then I'll get muscular and lean, and they might not be training legs, for example, something that I didn't attend too much in my early 20s and still bloody paying for it, and so that they're very much used to, I'm going on holiday, I'll pick up a copy of Men's Health and, I'll do bicep curls for 3 weeks and then I'll be in great shape. So, there's so much misinformation out there, that there'll be so many different questions going in the group. Quite often, how can I say? I mean, we know carbohydrates aren't the enemy. We need carbohydrates, but quite often people will be popping up and they're not doing any exercise at all. And they're basically, their whole diet is just, carbohydrates and too much and not enough protein, not enough vegetables. But they think that, because it's brown bread or because it's brown pasta, then that should be fine, when actually, they're not actually looking at their inactivity and probably they're overeating, those types of things, So in terms of barriers, so it was myths, just myths, things like that, really. Lots of guys will come from that school of they've been to the gym with their mates and they're only training upper body, ignoring legs because nobody, everyone's got an excuse for leg day. Thinking just guzzling protein shakes is going to get them in shape. Taking supplements that they don't really know. I mean, I used to take creatine in my 20s. I didn't understand what I was doing. I just used to buy it and I think, what a waste. How much money did I waste on supplements in my 20s? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's an interesting question. So do you think there are any supplements for the over 30 guy that you would recommend?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, gosh, looking back in my 20s, I bought everything, and there's fat burners this and all these different, creatines and power shakes and that. But to be honest, I recommend a good fish oil, for the brain and also for joint. Vitamin D, because, we don't get a lot of sunlight over here, although it's out right now, and I just encourage people to go and get out in it. I'd probably recommend sort of fish oil and vitamin D as my top ones. I used to recommend a greens drink. But to be honest, a lot of the greens drinks on the market, they taste disgusting. You're better off making your own. But yeah, vitamin D, and especially if somebody suffers, from the seasonal, what's it called? Seasonal
affective disorder.
Disorder, yeah. So vitamin D and fish oil, definitely.
Okay. And what about like protein? You talked about protein powders, but do you recommend like whey protein and things like that, or is it a case of?
I just say to guys, look, I've got a whey protein powder. I'll have a protein shake post workout if I can't access real food, but understand a protein shake is a protein shake. That's what it is. It's a substitute. If you're looking to get your protein intake up, then great. Get a low, while keeping your calories down. Get a lower calorie one with a good protein content, and have it with water. But don't think that a protein shake is gonna all of a sudden give you, this lean muscular body that you want. You've got to put the work in the gym. And I think that, I've got to be real with my guys. Like, I work with over 30s men, a lot of them in their 40s and 50s. Socially, they're absolute animals. They're just going out every weekend and just boozing. And I work in an environment with other trainers who have the same thing with clients. And it's our job just to advise. It's like, a long time ago, I realized I'm not going to completely change these guys. Because guess what? I like a beer too, myself. And why, I take this approach as what, I'm not training college athletes, so I'm not prepping anyone for a show or training college athletes for a big game. I'm training regular guys with stresses, with careers, but also with social lives and with a bit of money in their pocket. And if they want to go out for a 3-course meal with their wife on the weekend and drink a couple of bottles of wine, and maybe they're having 10 pints with their mates, all right, that's not optimal. But if I'm not going to change that, all I can do is advise. So I have to be a realist with them as well and say, well, look, if you are drinking this much on the weekend, you're probably not going to get the results that you could if you weren't. But if you are going to piss it up on the weekend, maybe we can put these things in place. Simple things like, most people, and I got this from a guy I did a podcast with. He said most people go out on a Saturday night and get so drunk and they just sit in their own shit on a Sunday. Whereas actually, if you just got up and went, okay, so I had X amount of beers and calories last night, what I'm actually going to do today is I'm going to get out for a long walk. I'm going to get out for a cycle. I might cut my calories back a little bit and up my water, maybe throw in a mini fast. And actually, I'll probably go back in to work on Monday feeling all right, having not done too much damage. But most people wake up, they feel like crap, and they go, oh, well, Sunday again, and I'll start Monday,
Yeah, definitely. And I think that kind of leads on to something else I was thinking about, which was, I guess, for one of the things I've found personally, maybe myself, in my mid-30s now, is that when you're younger, or when I was younger, I had much more goals were sport orientated, they were much more aesthetic orientated, and you have kids, and I train now and I do weights, and it's mainly aesthetic, but I think that sense of having a goal, maybe when you get a bit older, certainly for myself, it becomes, I think, the motivation sometimes to train when you're, and also when you're happy. I've got a wife, I've got a little girl. I'm really happy and content with my life, and so sometimes I think that motivation to train goes down. For me at the moment, it's just because I know how it makes me feel mentally. It makes me feel good, and mentally it's really good for me. So I think there's that. But I guess the other thing with guys, and again, obviously I'll get your opinion on this, but is how you keep them motivated when there's potentially it's not those, there aren't those obvious things to motivate them.
I want to I mean, that's a great question, and something for me personally is I have found, and I spoke about this a lot to my business partners, that I will get seriously lazy unless I have big challenges. And over the years, I've ran in Tough Mudders and half marathons and all that type of thing, and my training, I used to really enjoy my 10K run and a half marathon run. I'm getting back into it now, but my training went to pot a little bit when the kids were younger because they were in that hospital. We didn't get a lot of sleep. And I really, my own training suffered, but they're great. They're in good health now and they sleep through. So I'm really getting back into it. And I'm coming up 40. I'll be 40 in 2019. And I need something to keep me focused. So I need like a challenge or an event or something every 6 weeks. So far this year, I've ran in a Forest of Dean half marathon. That was my first half marathon in 3 years. Hurt like hell, but it was in the bag. A couple of weeks later, I ran in the Cardiff 10K. Now, in 5 weeks' time, I'm running in Europe's Toughest Mudder, which is 8 hours through the night, starting at midnight, finishing at 8 a.m. Now, I've done Tough Mudder, and it bloody hurt, and that was just one one lap. So this is through the night. I'm running it with a couple of clients, but I'm also raising money for the Noah's Ark Children's Hospital for Wales. This establishment were brilliant. They nursed my boys back to health when they were unwell when they were younger. I won't go into too much detail, but we were in there many a time. So I do a lot of fundraising for them. So that's a big challenge because it's one of those ones that you can't just rock up and go, hey, I'm here, let's do this. Years ago, I'd turn up and run a 10K hungover. I'd turn up and run a half marathon, after being on a night out partying with young ladies and things like that. But those days are gone. And also, it's an 8-hour event. So there is just, for me now, having that hanging over my head and the fact that I'm raising money for charity, there is no way I can, mess around with it. So it's keeping me focused. So it's like I said to you before we started recording, been training like crazy. Today I was knackered, but I've still managed to do 20,000 steps because I thought, well, I'll walk to the gym and walk back. And it just keeps me honest. It keeps me really honest because I found that if I don't have any goals, you sort of finish after a long week and you're like, oh, wow, what's the reward? And, I like a beer. I'm a man's man. I like to watch the football. I like a pint. And, quite often that could turn into probably too much. And then you sort of wake up with a little bit of regret because I'm trying to be this role model. And also I don't want to wake up with a hangover to my boys. So for me, I put things in place to eliminate any dangers. And this is what I try and help clients with. So, for example, what things I put in place this year to really help me, not because, I would go drastically off the rails, but it just keeps me accountable and will help me in the long run. So every Saturday I do a live workout for my following on the Facebook page. So that, and then I take a boot camp. So that instantly prevents me coming home thinking, oh, Friday, I'll have a couple of beers. Even if it's one or two, I just feel like I'll lose my sharpness a bit. So Saturday morning, I do my live workout. I want to feel good. I used to start late on a Monday with my one-to-one coaching. Now I'll go in at 7 a.m. Why? Because it keeps me honest on a Sunday and stops me having maybe too many drinks. And I think this is... So my only real danger, I say danger, my only real area is a Saturday night. And, if I want to have a couple of beers Saturday night, I'll have a couple of beers. But there's a difference between having a couple of beers Saturday night than having them Friday, Saturday and Sunday. And I think that's where the danger lies. And then that's where clients can fall into that kind of that weekend offender kind of trap. Whereas they think, well, I'm doing everything great in the week, but then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they hit it. And I think it's very easy to, on many different levels, slip into that kind of that bad pattern. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it's weird though, because I think since having Emily, you almost... having a hangover, as you know, with a toddler is just brutal. With a baby as well, it's just absolutely brutal. When you get a hand with the baby and you're like heads banging, it's the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
So I think in a weird way, I physically can't do it anymore. I couldn't go out Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night. And I like to have a beer, and I like to go out with my mates. And I'll tend to have a month where. I won't go out at all, and then I'll meet up with my mates in London. Most of my mates live in London, and I'll meet up with them, and then it will just be, for someone's birthday or, for these special occasions, then it will just be a mad one where it will be a late night, suck it up in the morning, and then move on. But I think that's also, you mentioned something earlier which made me think, actually, I think we have this, when you get over 30, you have got a life, you've got friends to see, you've got other things to do, and so I think having a balance is important as well. If you can't just expect people, especially with clients and stuff, to just not do those things, because they're not going to do it. They're not going to adhere to something they're just not going to do. So I think you have to have that mix.
Here's the interesting thing, Chris, right, is that a lot of my clients in their 40s and 50s, they've right now, I finish work and I'm home. I'm a family man. That's what I do. I don't want to be in the pub with my mates or anything like that. I'm a family man. I want to be with my boys. They're my two biggest passions in life are my business and my boys. Well, I've got three passions: Man United Football Club, my business, and my boys. In no particular order. No, first, right? Boys, Man United, business. Anyway, but so I'm in it. But a lot of my clients are in their 40s and 50s. Their kids are grown up. They say, Tregs, we get a social life back. And, guys in their 40s and 50s, successful guys, have got a bit of money in their pocket. And their kids are out. Their kids are 17 and 18. They're at uni. They're out with their friends. What do? They get this social life back. And it's really interesting because of the first couple of years of the kids being born, I would have one night out a year. But Christmas just gone, I had a few because it was like they're older now, and it wasn't because mine is so similar in age. If you had a hangover and they're just both there in nappies, and it's like 20 nappies a day. And I'll tell you, I was going to tell you this funny story. Like the first year we did Tough Mudder, the boys must have been 1.5 and 8 or 9 months, and my missus somehow thought that was a day. That was I ran it for charity and things like that, but she thought it was just a jolly, because we went out after for beers. So that was like, well, you had a night out. So literally, we were up early, 6 a.m., coached down to Tough Mudder, ran the event. Of course, you finish, they hand you a beer. So the first beer goes to your head. You end up drinking all night. We're in town. Next thing, I'm looking at my phone, and it's like 3 a.m. My missus, where are you? Where are you? So I'll be home now. So I remember creeping in and going in the spare room, probably about 4:30 a.m. I got to sleep. Bearing in mind I'm cut and bruised from Tough Mudder, all that. I think about 8:30, she walked in with one boy under one arm, one under the other, and she went, there you go, I'm off out shopping for the day. And like my head was just thumping, and I had a 1.5-year-old and an 8-month-old, and I had to entertain them all day. And you just like, yeah, I can't do this. I can't do it. So, unless it's like planned ahead, like I know I'm going on a stag do in like 3 weeks' time. That was signed off with the general like weeks ago, saying, right, what are you doing? Where are you taking the kids? But generally, I'll have 2 or 3 beers on a Saturday night. That's mine. That's me. I'm happy with that. And isn't this really funny, right? I've had this discussion with clients in the past, right? I was talking to one of my business partners today, and I said I had 2 pints of Peroni on Saturday night after being in the sun all day, and it was amazing. It was so nice. I went home then, we bathed the kids, and we were all in bed, 8:30. I had a lovely sleep. And I said, if you could just trouser or bottle that feeling you get from 1 or maybe 2 pints and go, I've had my fill, I'm walking away now. Wouldn't that be great?
It would be.
But then the thing is then it leads on to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6, and then, you're in all kinds of trouble. But, the satisfaction, the kind of buzz I got from that 1 pint, after playing all day in the park with my kids, it was amazing. And I'm just going to plug my thing back in. Yeah, totally it totally relaxed me. And then, I went home and went to bed. But it's having that sort of self-discipline, isn't it, to be able to do that?
Yeah, definitely. And that's the difficult thing, I think. Yeah, I'm the same, especially when you're with your friends and things and you haven't seen them for a while because you haven't been out, then it tends to descend pretty quickly and pretty easily, unfortunately. And it's always one of those things where there's that middle ground where you've had a few, but you haven't had too many and you feel really good. And like you say, if you could just stay at that peak. Yeah. But I tend to go over the cliff edge as well.
It's just amazing. That means you have to have another. But yeah,
exactly.
It's really interesting. And it's something I do, and the listeners might get a bit from this. Is I on a Saturday, especially now with the sun's out, and it's like really tempting. But I'm thinking Europe's toughest mudder. If I am going to have a beer on the weekend, I'll have it really late because then it prevents you then going, let's have a session. So I think that. If you've got people listening to this on a bit of a fitness quest, it really is to try and put those sort of things in place to just make sure that you don't go too off track.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's funny, I mean, in this industry, you see people on a Monday and they're riddled with guilt because they've done it again. They've gone out and they've pissed it up all weekend. And then you sort of patch them up. It's like... and then you get them to the Friday and you've got them feeling better. You've given them a motivational talk. You've trained them all week. And you go, right, are you going to behave this weekend? And they skip out of the gym all excited because they're going to go and do it again. But you can't. How do you quash that? You can't. Like I said to you before, I'm not training athletes. I'm training real over 30s guys that have big social lives. Yeah,
definitely. And one of the things I was just thinking about a second ago with over 30s guys, is there or for people out there that are listening maybe to the podcast who are over 30, and I've got a few views on this as well, but what are your thoughts on kind of mobility training or looking at those sorts of things, and also the importance of strength training for people over 30?
Mobility, dude, right? That's something that I've always ignored, but I'm having to really take it seriously now. And, training for Europe's Toughest Mudder and these half marathons, I actually started to see a sports massage therapist once a week, and that's gone up to twice a week now because she's great. And we're actually talking when she massaged me the other day, and she said, the first time I was barely putting my thumbs in your hamstrings, and you were like, biting the bed and screaming because I was so tight. And now, she said, get on the foam roller, make sure you're doing these stretches and this, that, and the other, and it really helps. And I was finding that it was just taking me ages to recover from any kind of run. It's just I wasn't stretching, I wasn't doing any mobility. So yeah, it's something that I'm exploring more of. In fact, my partner goes to yoga, and she wants me to go, but I think I'd rather sort of do it. I'd rather sort of do it in the comfort of my own living room, because like I am, I'm not that mobile. But again, it's one of those things, isn't it, where it's not kind of cool. Yeah, go and get this rubber band and go and do some stretching and mobility for 20 minutes. Guys just don't. It's not cool, is it? And they're ignoring it. But it comes a time where you do have to go, actually, shit. I mean, some of the guys that I've trained in the past, like their pecs are so tight where they're just sat down all day. They're sat at a desk. I've tried to pull their arms back to PNF, stretch their chest, and yeah, they're completely locked up. Hamstrings are tight. Yeah. It's incredible, really.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing for me, is that when you get over 30, you should be doing, in my view, of variety of training, and obviously you're going to have specific goals, so you're going to be periodizing your training towards those specific goals. But at the same time, even doing 10 minutes of mobility before your sessions, because often if you're going to do strength training, so if you're going to be doing squatting, benching, anything, even for aesthetics, if you really work on mobility stuff before you start, you often feel better, things are looser. I think the biggest thing people can often do is not just go in the gym and go on the treadmill and warm up on the treadmill, actually do some dynamic stretches, some dynamic mobility stuff, because then you're actually physically preparing yourself for what you're going to do, and that also kills two birds with one stone. Like, I never really get clients or patients to do mobility work after their workout, because they just won't do it. It's pointless. Do it before, because if you do it before, you're prepped, you're warm, your joints are then mobilised for whatever it is you're going to do, and then you get it in and you just don't forget to do it, and then do your strength training after that. So that's one of the big things I would say for guys over 30, is to maybe do their mobility stuff first at the very start of a session, so that they get that in.
Now, especially if they're doing any squatting or deadlifting and things like that. In fact, it's something I'm looking at introducing more into my global groups, is bringing in somebody who's a little bit of an expert in that field to really help the guys along,
Yeah, definitely.
Because everyone's got knocks over the age of 30, old niggles that just been left unattended.
Yeah.
I say to guys that if you're going to train 3 times a week, right, go for a massage. Go and see an osteopath and get clipped, because you wouldn't drive your car 2,000 miles a week and not have it serviced more regularly. So you need to look after yourself.
Yeah, and is there an optimal? You mentioned 3 times a week, so is there an optimal kind of time per week? Is there too many days a week? Like, what's your sort of advice to those people in your groups and stuff who say sort of how much should I be training in terms of volume?
I always say to people, look, just listen to your body. I think that is a great indicator. Like, I woke up this morning, I was like, there's just no way I'm lifting any weights today or doing any interval training. I'm just going to walk instead. I mean, I recommend resistance training three times a week in a lot of my barbell-based programs. And then people say, oh, but can I play football? Can I do a park run? I'm like, you do everything if you want, but just listen to your body. Your body's going to tell you ultimately if you ain't up for it. I want you to give these sessions, train with the intensity, and then everything else, if you want to have a go at it, and they find their way. It's like, I see it a lot in the new year. People come to you and they're like, all right, full of New Year's resolution and all this kind of stuff. I want to train 5 days a week. I want to do this. I want to do that. I'm going to give up smoking. I'm like, whoa, calm down. You've been doing nothing. You've been eating shit all over Christmas, drinking too much, and you're going to try and give all this. Just take things slow. And and I'll say to them things like, yeah, I want you to get out for a walk. A walk? What? No. I'm like, look, you were previously coming in at 5 a.m. in the morning and being lying on your sofa all day, hungover on a Sunday. Trust me, a walk on the weekend is going to be just fine if you're looking at sustaining this for the long term, Yeah. So ultimately, people will, I recommend you have to strength train 3 times a week. I think as long as you're, structuring it is more than enough, and anything else you can add in as long as you feel good, then just go for it. I mean, I'm a big fan now of just getting people out, getting a Fitbit on them, and getting their 8 to 10 to 15,000 steps in a day, because that all adds up massively.
And do you with people that are off the couch, how would you periodise their training in the sense of, do you do kind of you mentioned body weight first, and then would you be looking at specific rep ranges for those people, and then working into strength stuff? Would you be working into barbell stuff with up to fives, or what's your... To
be honest, if you're coming in on an online program, a lot of the stuff we do initially is like timed circuits, just so they've got no pressure on them to, so it's really basic, upper, lower. I'm a big fan of the sort of the PHA, peripheral heart action, upper, lower, and I use that for bodyweight exercises just because I want to get that heart pump, that blood flow around the body, get them out of breath, so it feels like they're doing cardio, getting a sweat on.
So just to clarify, Mark, just for people that might not know, so upper, lower being, for example, like a press up and then a squat, so an upper body, lower body.
One of my workouts might look like 30 seconds of squats, and then a 30-second of push-ups. They can do them off the knee, then 30 seconds lunges, then a 30-second core exercise, just getting that blood flow around the system. So initially when they come in and they're not touching a barbell, it's a lot of timed circuits to build their confidence. They don't have to commit to a certain amount of reps. Towards the end of that program, then we might throw in something whereby it's a little bit more challenge, like an AMRAP circuit, like a 10 minutes, so as many rounds as possible, try and complete, and then they've got certain reps. And then again, when we move them on, we kind of keep it similar with the sort of time circuits, but introduce a kettlebell. And it's only when they get into the barbell programs, so I've got a program I wrote called Muscle Up 1, Muscle Up 2. We've now combined that to call it Muscle Up Gold, and we get into sort of strict periodization there. Initially I'm getting them doing sort of 4 sets of 8 to 12 for the first month, just building that base, getting them used to lifting weights. And then later on in the program, we start to get into pyramid training, and I think we do a little bit of German volume training right at the end. And so, it's I like people to look back, if they were in one of my programs, to look back on week 12 at week 1 and go, oh, wow, that looked really easy. And I say, well, that's how far you've come. You wouldn't have done 10 sets of 10 back squats with a barbell on week 1 of this journey.
Absolutely. And I think that's the other thing is important. I think the way that you structure that for me is really nice, because you're building the foundations as well, because obviously if someone's off the couch and not done exercise before, they need to build that skill of being able to do a squat or a push-up or whatever it might be before they go into barbell stuff. I think a lot of that's a mistake that a lot of people make, is they kind of go into the weights too quickly, and actually they haven't got that foundational strength there, and that's where people can get injured. So again, in fact, which makes me kind of think about another point. So what would you say are the mistakes that over 30s make, or the big ones that you see, either people in your programs or anyone just kind of for the guys that are out there, if they want to avoid certain mistakes when they start to train?
I think too many guys, they're so fixated on the short term, and I used to be quite like this. I want it now. I want to drop 10 pounds. I want to do it now. Whereas and they'll go hammer and tong at it. It's just not sustainable. And I see it. I've been doing this 10 years, and I see it with people coming in. They get it. They run with it. And I know there's a rebound coming. And I try and say to them, look, you're being too strict. You're being too strict with your food. You're doing too much. No. And then all of a sudden, boom. And they'll come in going, I can't stop eating shit. I don't want to train. I feel... And I'm like, look, you don't have to try and aggressively drop 3 to 4 pounds a week. If you are, then it's not all going to be, fat. You're going to be, especially, I think a lot of guys will come into the plan and I'll say, right, don't weigh in this plan until the end of 28 days. End of the first week, you're on the scales. I've dropped 10 pounds. Boom. Yeah. These are the heavier guys. You're like, yeah, but it's not, it's a lot of stored water and excess glycogen, etc. And then they get on the scales at the end of week 2, even though you've told them not to. I've only dropped 2 pounds this week. And I'm like, you've dropped 12 pounds in 2 weeks whilst never going hungry. You're feeling great. And then they might get demoralised and fall off. So people want it all now. And one thing I try to say to them is, look, focus on the journey. Enjoy the journey, because if all of a sudden you're looking at this as a period of struggle and deprivation, you're not going to be able to sustain it. So focus on the journey. And I've been saying this a lot to clients now, let's say, what are we now? We're in the middle of April. So let's say there's, 30 weeks of the year left, all right? 36, say 35 weeks. If you dropped £1 a week now for the remaining time of this year, think about how life-changing that would be. You get to December the 31st and you've lost, over 35 pounds. That's pretty life-changing, right? Yeah. Say, well, do you know how easy it is to lose £1 a week? There's no suffering. That's just a 500 calorie a day deficit or, for example, a long walk, an intermittent fast, an extra training session, slow and steady, focus on the journey and enjoy it. And do you know how more you're going to be able to sustain that, and how much more you know your body when you get there? So guys are coming in, and I think it's the same for everyone, not just guys. They want it now. They want it now. Why not? Why not? Why not? They go at it hammer and tong. They won't get the result. They might get the results initially, then it slows down. And actually, when it slows down, this is getting good, because now you're really adjusting to it. You've lost the excess stored glycogen and water, and now you're really burning fat. And now you throw the toys out of the pram because you think things are slowing up when actually they're going in the right direction and you're not enjoying the journey. So focus on the journey. Don't be in a rush for results, and think about actually what you can achieve in a year being really sort of slow and sustainable, rather than being sort of hard. There is a place for hard, fast, aggressive. Don't get me wrong. If somebody's looking to go on holiday in 5 weeks and they want to drop a lot of weight, yeah, okay, drop your calories right down. Is it sustainable? No. But if you want that, some people might want that. But then it's about teaching them what to do once they achieve that goal. Because a lot of people might do years ago I slagged off all these things, Slimming World, Herbalife, I think these things just put you in a calorie deficit, so you lose weight. People say diets don't work. Well, they do, because you lose weight. So if you lost weight on a diet, it worked. But people don't tell you what to do afterwards. So if someone starts a diet of 15 stone, they diet down, doing whatever it is, aloe vera, clean 9, whatever you want to do, Slimming World, they get to 13 stone. The problem is when they come off that diet, they go back to eating like they were a 15 stone person, when actually your calorie requirements have changed now. Eat like a 13 stone person and you'll probably sustain it and it won't go back on.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think there's a really good, I don't know if you've read or heard of the book called The Compound Effect. Have you heard of that book?
I've heard of it, I haven't read it.
It's really good, but it's basically, it kind of sums up what you've just said there, in the sense that, you have two people, one of them's on an exercise and diet program, one of them's not. In 4 weeks, there potentially might not be that much difference in terms of the way they look, but you look at them both at a year, when one person's been consistently acting in a certain way and one person hasn't, the change is massive. And you look at that and you think, how on earth have you got to that position? But you've done it over just consistently taking really small bits of action on a day-to-day basis, and over time that builds and builds and builds, and it just compounds on itself. And it's the same with anything you do. It's with any skill, anything that you can do, I think, in life. You just do little bits day in, day out, and eventually you'll get there. And it's I think it is that short-term thing of, I'm not where I want to be right now, and therefore I'm going to give up. And it's giving up almost that I think is the key thing that people need to not do in order to reach those goals. Because I think it's definitely that lack of awareness, maybe, of what they can achieve in the long term, but then almost an overestimation of what they can achieve in the short term, which it's that getting that other way around. Like you said, if you could lose that 35 pounds every year, that is life changing. So I think it's really interesting how people kind of view things. And I think that psychological element as well, and that's one of the questions I had for you, which was, how do you, when you have those people that come in and they want to change everything right then, how do you so if people are out there with clients that are wanting to do this, what's your strategy, or what sort of things do you do to sort of try and rein them in, or to try and get them where they're not changing everything all at once, sort of thing?
I just survive. I say, look, like I said, I've had people that come in, they go, I want to stop drinking, I want to stop smoking, I want to do it. And I just go, look, I can't advise you with smoking, I've never been a smoker, but I know that if you go and cut all that out, you're in for a crash. So, I look at things like, look, just go away and do this. Give me 10,000 steps a day, drink 2 to 3 litres of water a day. Just start that, and do that for 2 weeks first. Let that become a habit, because it's about doing things so that, we get up in the morning, we brush our teeth, or at least I hope most people do. It's a subconscious thing. You stick the keys in your ignition, you drive your car. It's a subconscious thing. So it's about creating habits that just become normal. It's like when I say to people, how much water, I've been really bad with my water today. And I'm like, wow, I work in a gym, so I've got access to, water. I'm drinking all the time. And actually, I would know, if I'm dehydrated, I'm like, oh, and I think to myself, how can people not drink enough water in a day? So you've got to kind of help them to do that. So there might be apps and stuff that gives them a little reminder to drink more water. So if you can, I often say to people this, right? If you do a 28-day plan, if at the end of the 28-day plan you've started to drink more water, you're maybe eating greens with one meal a day, and you've upped your protein, is that something that you can do moving forward? And they'll say, yeah, it probably is. Okay, great. Then you've created a habit.
Yeah, and I think those habits is really important. Like you said, having a couple of habits and developing those same habits over a few weeks before you necessarily bring in other things. And I think that's a big thing that people can do. Anyone can do, but over 30 guys particularly, that are struggling with the weight and maybe lifestyle factors as well, and not trying to change lifestyle and diet and training and doing all those things at once. Just building those habits and building those foundations. And I think that's, for me, a massive part of training and achieving kind of either weight loss or muscle gain is just that consistent action, but also just doing things gradually over time, which really gives those long-term beneficial results, really.
Absolutely, dude.
Awesome. Well, look, I don't want to take up any more of your time, Mark. It's been really interesting just to chat to you and get some info. And yeah, where would guys go to if they wanted to find out about your online program and strength stuff?
We're on Facebook, so just type in 30 Plus Men's Fitness. You'll see the fan page. Also, the main website, which is 30plusmensfitness.com. We have a free community on Facebook, Chris, which you're welcome to join. You would just type into the search on Facebook, 30 Plus Men's Fitness free online global community. And click to join. If you're an over 30s man, you can jump in. We put in content out every day, and we would put you on our email list, and then you can find out more. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, so we're pretty much everywhere, buddy.
Cool. Well, yeah, no, I think, thoroughly enjoyed our chat, and I think that all the things you said today really, to me, make massive sense, and I love the way the foundations are built, and then you building on that with kettlebell stuff and with the barbell stuff, and it's not just trying to take someone from zero to hero in 6 weeks, and then they crash and burn and they're out the door. So I think it sounds really good to me, and I think I thoroughly enjoyed our chat.
Appreciate that, Chris. Thanks very much for having me on, dude.
Cheers, mate. Hi guys, thanks for checking out the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, then please leave us a thumbs up and share the video so that we can grow the channel. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and this is so that you won't miss out on any of our videos on strength training, physiotherapy and rehabilitation. Should be some videos knocking around about the screen which you can watch, which is some of our other stuff, and I will look forward to seeing you on the next video. Cheers guys.